Hello, I'm Shawn Lewis, and I'm going to tell you about exploration in Fisher Ridge Cave System, which took place between the summer of 2019 and present. So that's since the last NSS convention update. Yeah, Fisher Ridge Cave System grew about a mile in the past couple of years. It's been a slow past few years since the pandemic happened, but we still did have a few exciting trips to take place, and I'll tell you about that. Okay, so here we begin with the slides. Here's the Fisher Ridge system, including also Crump Spring Cave over here and Vinegar Ridge Cave over here. Okay, so it's been a anniversary year for us. 40 years since the discovery of the cave, 1981. These five guys discovered the cave, and in the next 20 years, they mapped 100 miles. And in the next 20 years after that, we only mapped 31 miles. So things slowed down a little bit. But there's still thousands of leads left. We just have to work harder to get to the exploration and find new stuff. A lot of our efforts have been picking away at leads in Northtown Ridge, which is this section of the cave. A lot of vertical leads, especially. Also pushing the periphery of the cave over here, which is close to the Vinegar Ridge system, and rigging a route over to this end of the cave where there's a bunch of leads still and a bunch of potential for the cave to continue in the upstream direction, pretty much in all areas. So what we really need is more folks to lead trips. Only 3 people really led trips in the past 2 years. Of course, there was a pandemic on, so it was a lull, but we are interested in having more trip leaders and cartographers. So definitely, if you're interested, we can get you involved. So real quick summary here, bunch of data, 22 trips roughly, 100 to 300 feet per trip, so not a ton of footage. There were a few longer surveys, one almost 800-foot day. Total survey about a mile. Main trip leaders were Andy Edwards, Ben Tobin, and I. Ben Tobin lives locally. He's a good guy to get involved with. A lot of effort focused on route improvements. So we did a bunch of work in the historic section on re-rigging and rigging of new stuff to get the routes to be safer and easier with large camp packs. I'll talk more about that. There will be slides. We had a Sarah grant for rigging, and we've just finished using all the hardware from the 2018 Sarah grant for rigging. And we just got a new one. So we're excited to start using that hardware for new exploration pushing rigging. Yeah, so the main topics I'll cover: pushes towards Vinegar Ridge Cave, climbing in Laura's Dome area, other continued mop-up in all parts of the cave. And oh yeah, really quick, really cool thing we've had happen since the pandemic with the advent of Zoom and everybody getting on video chats. We finally started to have grotto meetings after more than 15 years. So the Detroit Urban Grotto now meets digitally, which is something that didn't happen before the pandemic. So that's pretty cool. All right, so yeah, talk about rigging. There's been some, things that we let slide too long. Here's a picture of some stuff that got pulled out after a rainstorm and a lot of use. This is the new quick exit route, which is a nice clean drop into a big room. The old route's over here on the left. This route was really drippy, received a lot of wear and tear, especially this redirect, which is the picture you saw a couple slides ago. So this new route's not a lot drier and more clean. And then the historic section. So this is the original entrance to the cave. It had been accessed via this antenna tower being used as a ladder. We put in a rope and a nice redirect. And then further in, there's a taut line, slack line, and a couple of short drops. There's Andy rigging. This is the second drop in the cave. There's a nice redirect that pulls that to be a free hang. High angle redirects, by the way, everybody. Got to make sure those are stout. This is a rebelay, not too far in. That's new. Yep, so we're very proud of that. This is the old historic section. So here's more rigging just inside, Sonia Meyer. And then finally, we finished that effort in historic in February 2020. So this is me rigging a traverse around the dome pit that saves a couple of short drops and crawl. Here's Amy Morton rigging that same traverse near the start of it, bent down on belay. There's Amy on one of the new drops in the historic section. So a total of more than 10 new sections of rope in that part of the cave, which definitely facilitates safe travel with a camp pack to areas like this, Bob's Borehole. And that's the area on the far east end of the cave that we're proud to start working in now. So basically this is out here in the middle of nowhere. It's got a lot of potential pretty much in all directions, and there's tons of leads. They didn't even touch any of the vertical leads when they were working on that area before. Everything was, well, they didn't rig anything. There was a lot of things that should have been rigged that weren't, so we did all that. This is the new camp that we started for some of that work. Ben and Amy. And then to get out there, you have to go through the Century Tube, which involves a lot of stemming, some of which is kind of exposed. So Century Tube is a little bit of sweaty work to get through. This is a traverse across the worst of all the death pits in the Century Tube that actually rigged in 2013. But we went back and rigged a bunch of the rest. And there's a couple pictures of that rigging. Here's another spot we rigged in October when we finished all that rigging. Here's Ben Tobin. And again, Ben on a pit that leads to the Bob's Borehole. And here's Andy Edwards. And this is in the new drop into Angst Dome pit. So we had to dig this open, and it's an 80-foot pit that goes down to a dome pit that was already known. And the bottom previously required traveling through a long string passage that led you out into this dome complex. There were multiple ear dippers, really wet passage, terrible narrow canyons with slippery mud cracks. And there's a lot of work to get out there, pretty unsafe. But now there's a dry route to drop down that pit and continue into this walking lead. Apparently there's continuing walking leads and more domes and stuff. And it's on the edge of this big ridge heading east onto blank map upstream. We could get into more borehole. This is the borehole. Here it ends in breakdown, and the lower component of it ends in breakdown here. So that's what we're really hoping for. Get into more passage in this ridge. Lots of potential. There's Andy rigging more pits out there. This is the Century Tube. We rigged a pit to go down in the Century Tube. There's a lot of leads down there. Here's the thing in 3D and breakout. Every one of these blue question marks is a lead. Some of these leads are quite good. For example, this one is a walking passage. There's more walking passage in canyons below right here. A bunch of undropped pits along here. More undropped pits along here. A couple of walking passages over here. Some of these areas have really good airflow as well. So a lot of promise here. This is just part of the lead list for Bob's Borehole. This is about half of it, so a lot to do. By the way, that area to get out here from the historic entrance after all that rigging and stuff to make it a safe camp trip takes about 6 or 8 hours to get to camp. So hopefully we'll be doing a longer camp trip, 3 or 4 nights, so we can take full advantage of the new effort pretty soon, maybe in Labor Day. Okay, here's Laura's Dome. This is another very exciting part of Northtown Ridge. So Northtown Ridge has been the focus of a lot of work, especially the central part right here. Laura's Dome is the tallest dome in the cave. It's 150 feet high, roughly. There's a lot of canyons and bleeds in the walls. I think at one point I counted almost 20. So we started rigging some of them, and in 2019, Lee White did the climb of the dome, put in this orange rope up to this ledge right here. And then in October 2020, Philip Moneyhunt and Riley Blackwell finished the climb up to the top of the dome. There's a canyon lead here that goes to another pit. At the top is what looks like a dead end lead at the very top. And then there's another canyon right here that's we still need to rig a rope over to. It'll be a short traverse. But then on the opposite wall of the pit, there were a lot of climbs as well. Here's Riley doing a climb on the northwest side. That climb is about 30 feet. Once at the top, that led to some walking passage, and there's a bunch of leads back there still. We surveyed more than 200 feet there, went to an 80-foot dome. You can see this is Laura's Dome on the right. Some of the downstream canyons still have a bunch of leads, and we barely touched the southeast corner of the dome, which is where all those climbs were to the very top of the dome. Those leads are not even surveyed yet. So we've done the climbing. We're waiting to go back to survey. So there's a lot to do. And that's kind of in the central part of Northtown Ridge right here. Other stuff in Northtown. So this is kind of a colored by date. So older stuff is in blue, newer stuff is in green. That's kind of stuff that's been done in the last 10 years. Especially bright green, that's the newest stuff. One cool thing that happened just a few months ago, Andy Edwards and some other folks dug into a new room. This is like 40 minutes from the entrance, so it's pretty cool that they found this new discovery. It's a trunk segment, so it represents a level that's that should continue if they can get around the breakdown. So there's more work to do there. That's the room they got into. Nice big room, a lot of fossils on the walls. Another cool thing, right off the main trunk passage in Northtown are these domes. And these really haven't been touched until the past few months, but they're like 120 feet high. So that's pretty cool. And they have climbing leads all over them. So that's another target we'll probably visit at the end of the month. Some folks have been working on this place called the Dung Beetle Dig. This is a very muddy dig where you make mud balls and roll them back with your feet. It's pretty fun to get new folks involved because it's really close to the entrance, but it's got really good airflow. So maybe this will lead to something interesting. We did one trip to the very southern end of the cave, South Fisher. Here's Riley and some walking passage that we mapped. That was some mop-up. We mapped about 460 feet of stuff that was like upstream, headed upstream, and a little bit of loopy stuff. Yeah, a lot of it looked like this, really popcorny. It was Mary Hicks. Vinegar Ridge connection area. So we've worked on this for a long time, and in the past couple of years, we did 2 trips. These are hard trips to organize because from the Fisher Ridge side, you will have to crawl for 2 miles. And so we did a trip in May 2020 with Ben Dow, Chelsea Dow, and Peter Anderson Sprecher. Established a new camp. Here it is, Buttworm Canyon Camp, which is about 7 hours into the cave with a camp pack. And then from there, you can crawl another 2 hours and get to the VT domes. A lot of folks have asked this question as this trip has gone on. But VT domes is the area closest to Vinegar Ridge, and some parts are very close according to our plots. But the leads look like this, you know, so there's a lot of sandstone in that area, dome pits, very complicated. We managed to dig into a little canyon that went over 100 feet. Here's Chelsea in that canyon. And this is what it looks like on the plots. So here's Vinegar Ridge coming in from the left. This is a dome complex in Vinegar Ridge. Here's the new passages in Fisher Ridge, which have mapped in the past couple of years. And this is the end, and our new surveys over here, and they overlap. So line plots say the cave should connect anytime. We launched a trip in May this year, and we had teams from both sides, but we were stumped out. So that's a bummer. Hopefully we'll get to go back at some point soon. Here's the whole thing in 3D. A bunch of leads on the Fisher Ridge side are question marks. Unfortunately, a lot of those are not super good. So it's going to be some work. This is another thing we did on that same trip. So really close to camp, actually. Our camp in Flatarm Canyon is right here. The way out to the stuff close to Vinegar Ridge is all along this passage. This is the half-mile belly crawl. But this is downwind river. And it was mostly crawling and walking. So I would say like all of this was walking and then that was crawling. But it continues and has pretty good air going downstream. This is a stream passage, which is pretty rare in this part of cave. Northtown Ridge usually doesn't have streams that actually persist without disappearing into too tight cracks. This passage could intersect with some more downstream, like river passages, which could be in the Vinegar Ridge drainage. So this is another interesting possibility for connection, even though it's a lot further back from the cave, Vinegar Ridge Cave. Okay, well, that's about it for slides. I've got, a few trips coming up. I think Ben Tobin's doing a few in the fall. There's always more to do in Fisher Ridge. Trips are not super frequent, but we're hoping to get more trip leaders involved, and we're always looking for cartographers. So if you're interested, contact us.